Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. So, before we begin this moving forward series, talk about the Chicago Fire, I have two quick things that I want to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is something that I probably should have mentioned yesterday, but yesterday certainly was a sad day in the football world because we unfortunately lost one of the greatest footballer to ever play this game in Diego Maradona, who sadly passed away at the age of 16. And despite the fact that I know Maradona has been linked with numerous controversy, especially after his playing career, with him being a drug addict and addicted to cocaine during his time, and even during his playing career he was also having problem with that, and that there was times where he actually show up games like he just took cocaine before the game, and he was actually playing the game on high or something like that. There's no doubt that Maradona will always consider one of, if not the greatest football player to ever play this game, right up in the ranks of Messi, Ronaldo, Beckenbauer, Johan Cruyff, and Pele of the world. And everybody will always remember the iconic hand of God moment that happened in the 86 World Cup when Argentina take on England, and also in the same game, the goal of the century, and that is something is going to go down in the football folklore as two of the greatest moments we have ever seen in this game. And it's really sad that unfortunately yesterday we have to deal with the passing of Diego Maradona, and certainly my condolence is toward his family with how sad thing this event actually happened. But that being said, the second thing that I am going to talk about is the fact that yesterday I made a big mistake in terms of doing the moving forward series for Atlanta, and that there was one thing that I probably should have mentioned it, and I was kicking myself the fact that I didn't mention it yesterday, and that is Atlanta was still in the CONCACAF Champions League, and that technically Atlanta's season isn't officially over, and the fact that they still have that CCL game against Club America that's going to be happening on December, and certainly that will be a game that, I don't think that will be a game that Atlanta probably is going to go with their strongest 11, and they're probably going to act this like a preseason game, because we know that probably they have no chance against Club America, especially the fact that they're down 3-0 in terms of the aggregate score, and unless if they are going to do a Toronto FC against America, and even if they do that, they'll still lose on the tie, because even if they win 4-1, they'll still lose on away goals. They literally need a miracle in terms of trying to get past one of the best team in Liga MX and one of the best team in this region. So I think that could be a game, could be one that they're going to act like it's a preseason game, and they're going to bring a lot of those players that I think in that game, even though I know it's a competitive game, I think the fact that a lot of those players, they're going to really act as that is the game where it's going to be kind of like a tryout for next season of whether or not if they're going to remain in the starting 11 in next season, or they're going to be on the bench, because I know Atlanta this offseason, they're going to make a lot of moves in terms of trying to address what just happened this year in terms of having the worst year in franchise history, and the very first time where they have to go through this painful process of transition and trying to get themselves back into MLS Cup contender. But that being said, let us now actually get into the Chicago Fire, and this was really a season that, if I had to summarize two words for the Chicago Fire, it's what if. There was so many what if with this Chicago Fire team this season, and that there was so many games where I seen that what if they were able to take advantage of the chances that they had, or if they didn't blow a 2-0 lead, or didn't allow a goal late in the game, or maybe what if VAR did not go against them as they had in some of the games this season. This team could have made it the playoffs. But instead, they finished the season with a 5-10-8 record and have 23 points. They scored 33 goals while allowing 39 goals, and their goal differential is -9. And they finished 11 in the Eastern Conference, and they were in the driving seat in terms of making the playoffs and being the last team in the Eastern Conference. But because of the fact that they suffered that 4-3 loss against NYCFC, and the fact that Inter Miami was able to get themselves the win to get into that last spot, this was that end up to be a very disappointing year for the Chicago Fire. That, again, there was so many what if moments that if those, even like one or two of those what if moments turn out to be 3 points, they would definitely not be in the position that they are in heading into decision day, where they need to win if they want to secure themselves into making the playoffs. Now, for the MVP of this team, I mean, there's no doubt it has to be Robert Beric. I mean, I would say that there's an honorable mention to Georgi Mihailovic, who definitely had a breakout year this year in terms of being the top assist leader and have shown why he is considered one of the hottest American product in MLS. But there's no doubt it has to be Robert Beric, with the way that he was actually, I think, in the top 3 position for the Golden Boot this year with 12 goals and only 2 goals behind Diego Rossi, who scored 14 this season. And he, I think, finished second in the vote in terms of newcomer of the year, only miss out with Lucas Zairian winning the award. But there's definitely cases that he could have definitely won the award if you look at the stats number. And I think the breakout really happened for Robert Beric during the last 2 months of the season, where for the first couple of games there was definitely a lot of question about why in the world is he not scoring goals, and that is this just one of a couple of flops that we saw this season for the Chicago Fire, where they made a lot of big signing in the offseason and it turns out to blow up in their face. And there was also times where I said Robert Beric was kind of in that club of just cursed number 9 that just cannot find a way to put the ball into the back of net. But as soon as he was able to find a goal, and as soon as he ended his goal drought, he basically never looked back. Like, he was basically scoring almost every single game. There was a stretch where he basically scored in 5 straight games and was really one of the most informed striker we've seen in this league. And that if he can continue that heading into next season, the Fire have just got themselves a number 9. And that is something that not every single team can say in MLS. And even some of the good teams, some of them do still struggle in terms of finding a true number 9. And that, again, if Beric can continue his contribution, and that, this season continues, I can definitely see him scoring 20 plus goals. Consider, he already scored 12 goals this season on a shortened season. If this was a full 34 game season, he could definitely score 20 plus goal, and definitely could be a guy that is going to go toe to toe with the likes of Diego Rossi for that Golden Boot this year. Now, in terms of most disappointing player, there was definitely a couple of good nominations, especially on the defensive end, but I'm actually going to go with Ignacio Aliseda. And what's so disappointing about this year is that he was a guy that they thought that he was going to be the main playmaker of this team, and that they paid big money to hope that he could actually do well. And that the Chicago Fire thought that this was just one of those examples where they're kind of following the trend of all these MLS teams going down to South America, looking for these hidden gems and bring them here to kind of develop them. And they, of course, got Aliseda, who's considered one of the hottest prospect coming coming out of South America. But yeah, it did not work out whatsoever. Only scored, he didn't even score a goal in this game, and I think he scored 1 goal this season and only registered 2 assists to his name. And there's no doubt that that has to be a very disappointing total, considered that he could be definitely the one that is right there in terms of being the top assist leader of this team. Now, in terms of the top goal scored, as I mentioned, Robert Beric finished the season with 12 goals, followed by Fabian Herberts with 4 goals, Mauricio Pineda and Przemysław Frankowski with 3 goals, and Georgi Mihailovic finished in 5th place with 2 goals to his name. Now, in terms of the top assist leader, it's Mihailovic himself that has the lead in terms of that with 7 assists. Then you got Alvaro Madron with 6 assists, Gaston Jimenez with 3, Aliseda with 2 assists, and Boris Sekulic finished that list with 2 assists to his name also. So what went right for the Chicago Fire? Well, when they are on, they look like a playoff team. And what I mean by that is that there's been times where when they are actually playing up to their potential, and actually all those guys that they brought in the offseason are basically clicking on full cylinder, this is a very dangerous team to play. Like, this is definitely a team that looked like a playoff contender and could definitely be one that goes deep into the playoffs. But unfortunately, that didn't really happen all the time for this team. But when they do look like that kind of team, they are a really dangerous team and a team that you do not want to play. And obviously, the other thing that went right is, as I said, Robert Beric. He is the real deal, and that I can't wait to see what he's going to do next season and whether or not, if he can, of course, continue this good run. And that's going to be interesting too, because we've seen before where, strikers, they do well when they come to MLS in their first season, but then the sophomore slump basically hits them. And that, for the Chicago Fire, they obviously know the story of Nikolic, of how he had an incredible first year with the Chicago Fire and was actually the Golden Boot winner with 24 goals that season. And then the next year, he basically kind of regressed, and that they hope that Robert Beric is not going to be one of those guys that is going to unfortunately follow in the footstep of Nemanja Nikolic, who started to struggle in terms of scoring goals as the season goes on. What went wrong for the Fire this season? Inconsistency. I mean, I know it seems like almost a meme every time I talk about the Chicago Fire being a very inconsistent team, but the bottom line is that is the case. I mean, you look at their form this season, it's kind of similar to previous season, where just as you thought that things were going to turn around, and just as you thought that they potentially are going to go on a winning streak, yeah, they basically lose their next game, and that they were pretty much brought back down to earth. And these inconsistency is one of the many reasons that killed the Chicago Fire in terms of their chances of making the playoffs. Again, too many what ifs moments this season. Some of them wasn't really kind of their fault, with the way that I talk about how referee during part of the season seems to be against them, and that it was unfortunate that of course is the case. But there was also times where it was kind of on them, with the fact that they had big moments in terms of put away chances to really put away a game that they're involved, and they don't do that. And in the end, they basically would either lose or draw those games because they weren't able to put away those chances, and that those what if moments basically come back to haunt them. And then the third thing that went wrong for them is no doubt the road form. I mean, this team is one of the few teams in MLS that have registered 0 wins on the road this season. And when you register no wins on the road this season, that really takes a lot of pressure in terms of the home form. And although this season, I don't think the home form was very bad for the Chicago Fire. There's been times that they look very good when they're playing at Soldier Field. Yeah, they just didn't win enough in terms of overcome the road form that was just absolutely awful, and that they didn't even get a single win this season on the road. Now, moving forward in terms of this team, well, already in this offseason, they seems like they already waste no time in terms of making signing. In fact, as soon as they were eliminated from the playoffs, they immediately announced their end of season roster move, and also decided to sign a striker that I think he's from Uganda, and he was going to be the one that potentially replaced CJ Sapon, that they decided to not bring them back. And then just recently they signed a Venezuelan international defender. I think it's Jean Espinoza that they recently just signed in to try to help to improve their defense, which the defense was also a big issue for the Chicago Fire, with them giving up 39 goals this season, one of the most in the Eastern Conference. They hope that getting a defender in there will kind of help out their defense. So yeah, it's not like the Chicago Fire team is just like those teams that, knowing the fact that they feel like they had a relatively good season, and that maybe this is just one of those years where things didn't went out for them. They don't make any changes, and then heading into next season, it's basically going to be the same. No, the Chicago Fire team is very proactive, and it just kind of just shows you this new ownership that the Fire has. You can see they're not afraid to spend money, and that was one of the criticism in terms of the old ownership, and that a lot of Fire fans were so angry with how the old owner being cheap and decided to not spend the money to really build a good, decent squad. Well, now they are actually spending the money, and that it'll be interesting to see whether or not if they can, of course, get the result now that they're spending the money and trying to improve the team. The second thing that moving forward for them is that now that Rafael Wiki does have a year under his belt, can he continue to improve his team? And, this season, it's been very tough for Raphael Wicke, and that there's a lot of reason why for a lot of these first-year head coach. I'm not going to say that if they did not do well this season, I'm not going to say that this was a terrible year for them and that they're going to be under the hot seat, because this year there's been so much thing that a head coach have to overcome. And in my opinion, a lot of these head coaches, this is probably the most difficult year that they have in all of their coaching career, mainly because this season has just been so crazy with it being kind of stop and go, and that you basically had a span where we had a tournament that was going down in Orlando. We also had games that was playing pretty much every 3 days, and then there's times where COVID strikes and that they cannot play a game, as it was the case in one of the games for the Chicago Fire against Minnesota United. So with all those challenges that teams have to deal with and head coach have to deal with in terms of switching the teams, because they're playing pretty much every game in a 3-day spell, this was definitely a very difficult year for first-year head coach, and hence that's why I think, even if Raphael Wicke did not get this team into the playoffs the first season, I'm not going to say he is a bad head coach and anything, and that, I think the Fire will give him time, knowing the fact that, again, as I said, because of how crazy this season has went, and also with so many players that they bought in the offseason, where it does take time to try to gel the team and trying to get the philosophy into the players on this team. It's definitely going to be tough for him, and that I think his second year will be one that I think you could say that we can maybe start to judge whether or not if he's actually going to be the right fit for the Chicago Fire. And then the third thing moving forward for them, and I know this is not going to happen until probably the end of next season, but I'm looking forward to what the new logo is going to be look like for the Chicago Fire, and certainly fair play to the Chicago Fire ownership. Definitely listen to the fans, and a lot of fans was very angry with the way that their new logo and the new rebrand that they had heading into this season, and it seemed like that kind of angry message has reached to the front office, and they decided that they're going to scrap the logo that they of course had. And again, for those people that think, why in the world couldn't they just do it sooner in 2021? Well, here's the thing. First, we have a pandemic, so that's probably going to cause a little bit headache in terms of trying to rush to bring a new logo. Two, it does take time in terms of trying to come up with a new logo, especially I heard about how the new logo, they need to, of course, come up with a new logo and have to give the design to Adidas to basically put it onto their shirt, and that does take a lot of times too, especially during this pandemic that we're in right now. And then the third most important thing that I think fans need to understand why it's taking a little bit longer is because they don't want to make the same mistake that they did last year, and that I really think they kind of rushed it in terms of trying to come up with a new logo. And the last thing you want is that they're going to try to rebrand for the second time and they're going to get it wrong again, and the fans are going to be angry and demand them to try to rebrand again. So yeah, fair play to them in terms of acknowledging the fact that the rebrand that they originally made did not work whatsoever, but also fair play with them admitting the fact that yes, we're going to try to take time in terms of thinking about what the new logo is going to look like. But yeah, there we have it. That is pretty much it for this moving forward series for the Chicago Fire. If you are a Fire fan, let me know in the comment below, what do you think of this season? What went right? What went wrong? And most importantly, moving forward for this team, what is the future of the Chicago Fire teams going to be heading into next season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.